Well, that certainly did not take long, did it, Lions fans? We got breaking news coming straight out of Detroit, and this one hit the timeline fast, almost too fast to believe. Within hours of one quarterback walking away from a game, the Detroit Lions had already found his replacement. So buckle up because we're going deep on the surprise reunion nobody saw coming, why it makes way more sense than it looks on the surface, and what it could mean for this team as they barrel toward their season opener. And before we get into it, if this is your first time here, welcome to Detroit Scope. We are grinding hard toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you hitting that subscribe button gets us closer, so stick around and help us out. Let's get into it. Here's how the day unfolded. Detroit Lions head coach Dan Campbell stepped up to the podium and dropped a bombshell nobody was expecting. Veteran backup quarterback Teddy Bridgewater had decided to retire. Bridgewater was supposed to be the steady, experienced presence behind Jared Goff heading into this season, the kind of guy who could step in and not lose you a game if something happened to the starter. And just like that, he was gone, walking away from football entirely. That left the Lions in a genuinely tricky spot, because suddenly the only true quarterback left on the active roster was Luke Altmaier, a young player without much NFL experience, sitting one snap away from QB1 duties if anything happened to Goff. That is not a position any franchise wants to be in less than 4 days before their first preseason game. But here's where things get interesting and honestly kind of fun. The Lions did not sit around and panic. They did not wait for training camp to sort itself out. Within hours, and I mean hours, of Bridgewater's retirement news breaking, reports started flying that Detroit had already found their guy. According to NFL Network's Mike Garafolo, the Lions were signing veteran quarterback Josh Dobbs to a one-year contract worth $1.425 million, with $475,000 of that fully guaranteed. Garafolo specifically called it a significant commitment to Dobbs as the new number 2 quarterback behind Goff. And when you dig into why Detroit moved this fast on this specific player, the whole thing starts to make a lot of sense. So let's talk about who Josh Dobbs actually is, because tabloid headlines aside, this guy has lived one of the wildest journeyman careers in modern NFL history. Dobbs was a 4th-round pick out of Tennessee back in 2017, selected 135th overall by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Since then, he has bounced around the league in a way that would make your head spin. Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, back to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, a stint with the Detroit Lions practice squad in 2022, the Tennessee Titans, back to Cleveland, Arizona, Minnesota, San Francisco, and most recently New England. That is 9 different organizations, and depending on how you count the multiple stops in Pittsburgh and Cleveland, arguably more. This will actually mark his 2nd stint with the Detroit Lions, because back in 2022, Dobbs spent about 2 weeks with the team on the practice squad and never saw a single snap of game action in Honolulu Blue. Fans never even got a real look at him. Well, that is about to change. Now here's the piece of this story that ties everything together and explains exactly why it was Josh Dobbs and not some other free agent floating around the league. Back in 2023, Dobbs landed with the Arizona Cardinals while starter Kyler Murray was recovering from a torn ACL, and the offensive coordinator running that Cardinals offense was none other than Drew Petzing, the very same Drew Petzing who Detroit hired this offseason to be their new offensive coordinator. That connection is not a coincidence. That is the entire reason this move happened as fast as it did. Petzing already knows exactly what Dobbs can and cannot do within his scheme. There's no learning curve, no guesswork, no crash course needed. This is essentially Detroit pulling a player off Petzing's old roster and plugging him directly into a system he has already run reps in. That kind of familiarity is priceless when you're scrambling to fill a whole 4 days before preseason kickoff. And let's talk about how Dobbs actually performed under Petzing, because it turns out this was arguably the best stretch of his entire career. Playing for Arizona in 2023, Dobbs started 8 games, completing right around 63% of his passes for roughly 1,569 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions, good for a quarterback rating hovering around 81. He also carried the ball 47 times for 258 yards and 3 additional rushing touchdowns, showing off the mobility that has always been part of his game. That stretch in Arizona is what turned Dobbs from a career backup into a name football fans actually recognized, and it is directly tied to the exact coordinator now calling plays in Detroit. If you're looking for a signature season to point to and say, this is the version of Josh Dobbs the Lions are hoping shows up, that Arizona run under Petzing is it. Since that Arizona stretch, Dobbs has continued his tour of the league, spending time with Minnesota, San Francisco, and most recently New England, where he served as the backup behind young Patriots quarterback Drake May for the 2025 season. His role there was minimal, appearing in just 4 games and completing 7 of 10 passes for 65 yards without a single start. New England ultimately released him back in March after failing to find a trade partner, opting to keep a different backup instead. So make no mistake, this is not a player walking into Detroit off some huge, statistically dominant season. This is a proven, well-traveled journeyman whose greatest value is experience, adaptability, and most importantly, that direct connection to Drew Petzing's playbook. Now let's dig into that contract number for a second, because it tells its own little story. A 1-year deal worth up to $1.425 million with $475,000 fully guaranteed might not sound like much in a league where stars are signing record-breaking extensions, but context matters here. For a pure backup quarterback role, that guarantee is a real, meaningful commitment. It signals that Detroit is not treating Dobbs like camp filler or an emergency arm to stash on the practice squad. They view him as their genuine number 2 behind Jared Goff for the 2026 season, the guy who steps in if anything happens to the starter. That is a very different type of signing than bringing in a body just to survive training camp reps. Here's a fun wrinkle to think about heading into the season. There's been chatter about whether Drew Petzing might find creative ways to get Dobbs some snaps even when Goff is healthy and on the field, not as some gimmicky wildcat package, but as genuine design plays that take advantage of his mobility, maybe a bootleg here or a design keeper there, mixing among the standard offensive sets so defenses cannot simply key in and diagnose at the moment he steps on the field. Whether or not the Lions actually go that route remains to be seen. But knowing Petzing's familiarity with exactly what Dobbs brings to the table, it would not be shocking if a handful of situational plays get sprinkled into the game plan across the season. Let's zoom out for a second and think about what this means for the rest of the quarterback room. Before this signing, Luke Altmaier was the only true quarterback on Detroit's active roster behind Jared Goff, which is a nerve-wracking spot for any franchise to be in this close to real football. Bringing in Dobbs immediately changes that dynamic. It does not necessarily spell doom for Altmaier's long-term future with the team. These decisions rarely get made before a single preseason snap is played, but it does signal that the front office was not comfortable rolling into the fall with an inexperienced arm as the only fallback option. Dobbs gives Detroit a proven, well-traveled presence who can step in on short notice without needing to be walked through the entire offense from scratch, which again comes right back to that Petzing connection. There is also a human element to this story worth sitting with for a second. Teddy Bridgewater's retirement is a big deal on its own. This is a player who fought his way back from one of the most gruesome knee injuries the league has ever seen, rebuilt a respectable career as a steady, professional presence in multiple quarterback rooms, and now walks away from football entirely. Whatever role he was going to play for Detroit this season, his presence in that quarterback room mattered, and his sudden decision clearly caught the organization off guard enough that they had to move at lightning speed to fill the void. Credit to Bridgewater for the career he put together, and credit to the Lions front office for not missing a beat in response. So where does this leave the Detroit Lions heading into their first preseason game? With a proven veteran quarterback who already knows Drew Petzing's system inside and out, signed to a contract that signals real trust rather than a desperate stopgap, all in the span of a single afternoon. We are going to get our very first real look at Josh Dobbs in a Lions uniform, something that never happened during his brief stint back in 2022. Whether he ends up throwing meaningful passes in a regular season or simply holding down a steady, reliable presence on the sideline, this is a move that makes sense on every level: timing, familiarity, and value. So that is the breaking news. Lions fans, a shocking retirement, a lightning-fast reunion, and a quarterback room that suddenly looks a whole lot more secure than it did just this morning. Let us know what you think about this signing down in the comments. Are you excited to finally see Josh Dobbs suit up in Honolulu blue? And do you think we will see him take some design snaps once the regular season kicks off? And seriously, if you have not already, hit that subscribe button, We are working hard to reach 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you gets us closer. Like this video, drop a comment, and we will see you in the next one. Go Lions!